I am a stage director and stage designer, originally from Ljubljana, from Slovenia, working internationally. And of course, my main focus is contemporary and experimental opera and music theater. Doing classical opera titles is, in a way, another approach, because we work with something that is given. We have a libretto, we have a partitura, we have a score, but we don't have a living composer, and we don't have a living librettist. So this is something that I always, in a way, miss doing classical or traditional operas. And this is also why I was always a big fan of new operas, or let's say contemporary operas, experimental music theater. And I must say, I think now I have around 50 or 60 different opera stagings created from Baroque till 20th century, and of course quite some contemporary and experimental opera projects. And I must say, the longer I do theater, the less I have a clear key how to make theater. Yeah? So of course, one knows where you want to go, but the more and more I understand, and I tend to work with theater as collective art. Yeah, so I usually understand my role of a stage director. I usually call myself sort of a scenic curator, how to bring energies, how to bring people together. And I worked with many living composers, which is for me a special luxury and honor, and fun, mainly fun, because when you do new operas, I'm usually involved in the process from very beginning, when libretto is being sort of laid out, when the composer begins to compose. And of course, I'll also here I met very different approaches. Some composers want to finish the work first, and then they consult you as a stage director. And some of the composers really like to have you sort of a stage director, or let's say even better, sort of a dramaturge present from the very beginning of their composing process. So I'm also quite used to collective compositions. The last project we did was Ti Amo, an opera project composed by 3 composers parallelly. I know all of them, and of course this is something that is a big challenge, because opera as theater for me is still living art. And if we look back, for example, in 19th century, the opera at that time was completely contemporary theater. It was compositions and stories of, at that time, living authors and composers. And of course, this I sort of lack today. I mean, the repertoires of the national or state theaters are still quite mainly focused on the classical repertoire of 19th, or let's say beginning 20th century, sometimes Baroque, of course. But for me, it's an important issue in my work to develop the contemporarity of opera, so to say. When we met with Petra Strahovnik, of course, I already knew her work, and I knew how she composes. And she addressed me with this very intimate, very tender story, inspired by a novel of a Slovenian writer living in Trieste in Italy, Marko Sosic, who passed away some time ago, just in the process of when Petra is creating the Ballerina project. And of course, I read the novel and I was immediately inspired because Marko Sosic is in a way writing a story about a ballerina, which is a main figure, and the whole novel is seen and narrated through her eyes, through her language, through her mouth. And when reading the novel, one could say it is a story dealing with the topic of autism, yeah, and how autism is a part of our lives and a part of our world. On the other hand, I think the story and the message which Marko Sosic wanted to say is even much more layered, because it doesn't speak only about autism, which is a special and very important issue, but it speaks mainly about the difference in the society. And it speaks, he speaks actually from also his own life experiences, and how all of a sudden one, whether him or me or us, can get a feeling that all of a sudden we are not part of the society anymore. It can be our completely subjective feeling, or it can be a feeling that is given to us by the society. So this is, let's say, the question point of Marko Sosic novel. And when we begin to speak with Petra about it, I very soon I understood that it is something that she's really interested in personally. And this is, I think, is the main aspect. You have to enter a project with a certain, not only interest, but let's say a passion. And she was not interested, she was passionate about the topic, to be concrete. And immediately when we start our discussions about the project, even before we agreed we will do it, but when we began to speak about the project, we already realized that we're actually creating it. So yeah, we just went for a coffee and we started to speak about Ballerina, and all of a sudden we already found out that we are speaking about dramaturgy, that we're speaking about the form, how the piece should look like, etc. So, and that's how it all began. And the project should originally be performed 2020. And we, as we know, we had quite difficult 2 years of this crazy world pandemics. So we were just in the rehearsal period with our performers and singers in Ljubljana when the whole project got cancelled. It was very, very sad. And now we are finally back on track, and we are moving forward with also with the live musicians. At that time, we were not sure if we will be at all able to use any live musicians because there were so many limitations given. And now it seems the world is back to, I will say, half normal, back to half normal. So we continue with the project, including with the live musicians from Modelo. And of course, we have singers and performers from Ljubljana coming to The Hague. And yeah, and Petra, in the meantime, also, I think, developed her project. So everything will happen in the 14 days when we meet together, all of us in the Hague. When creating new operas, I divide this into two branches. Something I call this sort of a contemporary opera, which was, for example, a project I did with Maestro Stephen McNeff. It was an opera called Beyond the Garden. It was an opera with a classical libretto form, with a classical partitura, and still sort of a, let's say, dramatic form of approximately 1 hour 20, 1 hour 15, contemporary opera. Yeah, the other branch, and this is something that I think is more close to the project of BallerinaBallerina, is for me the aspect of experimental opera, or let's say experimental music theatrical project. Here, of course, we approach with already a classical post-dramatic aesthetics. What was the trigger for me and Petra was exactly the point of view of the main heroine, the ballerina. That means the whole book is told by a narrator who is the main character and who is hardly to be believed. So that means the whole book is a very subjective narration. We don't know what the truth is. She speaks about her mother, she speaks about her family, she speaks about her emotions, her feelings, but it is something that goes from the mouth of one person. And actually, when we spoke with Petra, I said, Petra, I don't think we should make an opera about, we should make an opera about autism. Because I don't think this is a main aspect. I think autism is only, as I already said, is only one of the aspects. And what I think is the more important is the perception of the world and the perception of the people. So not only how the society perceives people with being different, but also how artists perceive the world, how the perception in general is very, very subjective. So the project will be, let's say, approximately 1 hour 15 or so without break, sort of an atmospherical installation, sound, acoustic, visual installation. I think this will be the form. We have also, as I said, there is two singers, Natasha and Mateja, 2 sopranos. There is a performer, living performer, which is Sanja Nešković-Peršin from Slovenia. She's a ballet dancer, but also a very famous performer artist. Then we have live video designer on stage, Vida. She's not only a designer, but she's really a VJ, using also the technique of the live camera, bringing it into the detail of the details of the stage. So something that an audience from a certain distance cannot see. And of course, then we have 9 live musicians from Modelo62. A part of the project was already created in the Ljubljana period with the performers. And the next stage, that's why we can also do it in these 2 weeks, will be the finalization in The Hague. If I can just say one thing, this is sort of where we want to go. It is, let's say, a project that connects, of course, with not only with installation art. It is a project that connects with performance arts as well. Petra is composing also in a way a classical partitura, but she still keeps spaces for improvisation. She still keeps spaces for interaction. She still keeps spaces for something that can happen alive and all of a sudden. So I cannot promise that every performance of Ballerina will be the same, because we want to we want to keep this certain openness of the project. But on the other hand, we stick to a very, let's say, minimalistic aesthetics. There will be sort of inspirations from the book. There are chairs on the stage. There is a certain door which ballerina sees, and sometimes she has a feeling that she's approaching the door. The other time she has a feeling that the door approaches her. So we are really working with this kind of sometimes I can even say it, a changed perspective, because we are so used in today's world, we are so used to use the perception on the base of the logics. But also when we study Merleau-Ponty and his phenomenology of perception, it's quite an inspiration how ridiculous that is. Because I remember once I was in Zurich when I was studying there, and this is one of the artworks I will never forget. It was an installation, and there was only a video showing the human view through the human eyes, but in a reverse situation. That means when the person watches, there was a black on the screen, and when the person closes his eyes or her eyes for the second, you could see the image. And I must say, I was so inspired. I think I was just sitting there for hours, because at that point it opened my eyes and opened my closed eyes, how many things we miss in this time, and still we believe that our perception, our visual perception, is in a way absolute. So these kind of things we will try to open. And just to make perhaps a short conclusion, for me in the theater, always opening new questions is more important than stating approximate answers. Yeah, I think art should not give results. I personally like much more the analytic approach of art than the synthetic approach. And this is the way we will go with Ballerina. We hope that the audience will not only in this hour 15 will feel the atmospheric mood of our ballerina, who can become practically everyone from us. But I hope that when the audience will leave the show, that they will perhaps begin to see or think or look at some things in life from a little different, or let's say little brighter or more opened perspective.